Okay, just a little thing before we get started. After I recorded the video, it was reported that Wizards of the Coast went back on their decision to forcibly update the spell library and automated casting system, but it still goes to show, that it should not have gotten to that level in the first place. They were still trying to treat it like a video game where they just release a patch and that's the end of it, when my core argument is that Dungeons and Dragons is not a video game. Also, my audio recording got corrupted, so this is all done on camera microphone, so please ignore that. And with that, let us begin. Yeah, no hat tonight. It's the middle of summer. It's hot. Although the subject du jour in the space is about the new edition of Dungeons & Dragons, or new 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons, and about how they're going to try to heavily monetize it. And as the creator of Can You Play Dungeons & Dragons with Only Things Found at the Dollar Store, I felt that it was probably necessary for me to weigh in. So, the highly successful Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is actually 10 years old now. It has been probably one of the most successful editions of Dungeons & Dragons, easily the most successful since 3.5, possibly even more than 3.5. But Wizards, the higher-ups at Hasbro, having become aware of how much money Wizards makes, have demanded that it makes more money. So they've been making a lot of really divisive decisions regarding the game systems. They have been extra obnoxious on social media, I've noticed. But the wild thing is that they are aware that Wizards of the Coast is basically the thing that is keeping Hasbro alive. It is basically their lifeline right now. It is the tube that is supplying oxygen for them, because nothing else they're really trying to make right now has really been working out. So what has happened is they are trying to basically make 5.5 edition. Like, 3.5 edition was a modification to the rules of 3rd edition. But this 5.5 edition, as a lot of people have called it, and like everybody except Hasbro is calling it, has come with a lot of controversy, mostly because a lot of it is because they fired a ton of staff who used to work on things. A lot of the people who have been made higher-ups of the companies, which I have accurately described multiple times as just being a bunch of already rich people taking turns in the fancy chair, are talking about, recurrent spending and monetization as though this was a video game. There's an interview out there that when the interviewer makes a joke and compares it to Fortnite, the guy leaps at the opportunity to say, yes, our new Dungeons & Dragons is going to be like Fortnite, and the eyes cannot roll hard enough. So that is probably the biggest controversy. Is one thing they are trying to do with Dungeons & Dragons 2024 is they're trying to aggressively move it to the digital space. They've made this virtual tabletop. All sorts of things have been going on, and they're saying out loud that their goal is to increase monetization of Dungeons & Dragons, and a lot of people, myself included, are disgusted by it. They are eager to make comparisons between Dungeons & Dragons and video games. That's what they did in 4th edition as well, and they had a huge fall off. In fact, Dungeons & Dragons created one of their worst enemies by going with 4th edition. And they're trying to do it again. I don't know who needs to do it, but somebody needs to go to these executives and explain to them that one of the main reasons people like Dungeons & Dragons is because it is not a video game. People play Dungeons & Dragons because they can, be creative and have fun with friends and defeat the Lich by blinding him by shoving a pair of boxer shorts on his face. All sorts of crazy things that a video game really cannot do. A video game has limited ways to engage with the situation. I mean, people can point out Baldur's Gate 3, but do you know how long it took for them to make Baldur's Gate 3? Do you know how large the gap between Baldur's Gate 2 and 3 is? It took a Herculean effort to get Baldur's Gate the way it is, and Hasbro fired all the people who helped make that possible, if that shows you where their priorities are. So I have been having to... This video's taken me a little while to come out with because I have been navigating a lot of weird stuff, a lot of misinformation. There's a tweet talking about how they want to have the monthly membership fee to use the Dungeons & Dragons digital tabletop be $30 a month, which is more than Nintendo charges in a year.
That tweet is from a year and a half ago, so I'm not sure how much stock to put into that. There has been talk about one of the big ones. One of the big ones that I think has caused the most controversy and the most misunderstandings is they're talking about D&D Beyond, which is something that Hasbro bought a while back. It is a system similar to the system I use, which is Roll20. I use Roll20 to play my games. And they actually have an automatic spell system where what you do is you basically have like a little chat and you can type cast and then the name of a spell. And what will happen is that spell will appear in the chat log along with its description and any necessary dice rolls having already been made. Spell DC, all of that will just, kind of one and done. Get it all done and out there. You don't have to do a lot of reading. You don't have to do a lot of explanation or a lot of rolling. It's a handy little system, and I assume what the controversy is surrounding the new Dungeons & Dragons edition is that feature. What is apparently happening is a spell feature in D&D Beyond where if there's a way to like automatically cast a spell, or if there is something like in there like I know D&D Beyond also keeps like a list of all the spells handy. All of the old versions of those spells are being replaced with the new ones from 5.5. They're not making like a 5.5 edition of the spell. No, if the spell has the same name, like Find Traps, I believe that's the big one that people have been talking about. If it has a 5.5 edition spell, it's going to get shifted over to 5.5 edition. If you want to use that old version of the spell because you, like the cut of old 5th edition's Jib, too bad. You have to turn on Homebrew and type in those old spells by hand. Sorry. I know there's been like misunderstandings like that, like people talking about how they're like permanently removing the old spells or things like that. I'm pretty sure the case is actually them removing, spells from the basic library, spells from like the automatic casting tool if D&D Beyond has one of those. I do think maybe there should be a way to, opt into having the old or the new when you're setting up a game. But yeah, some people have like blown that out of proportion, and a lot of people have gotten upset at the thing that's blown out of proportion. But I still think that's kind of a dirty thing to do. And D&D Beyond is already like a wild subscription service. Like, what is its price? Like $4.58 a month? It's like a really weird number, but I and a lot of people are concerned that with their goal on like increasing monetization on Dungeons & Dragons, everything, that they're going to introduce the virtual tabletop with all of its DM unfriendly stuff. Like a lot of people have criticized the new edition for just like not having anything for the DM. Like, all sorts of descriptions. It's like, oh, they'll frustrate your DM at the table. The DM is not supposed to be the enemy of the players. Dungeons & Dragons is a game of cooperative storytelling, and it's everybody's job to have fun. A dungeon master is not the opponent of the characters. It is the person who, keeps the story going and helps the players feel cool. That is your job as a dungeon master, is to make sure everybody is having fun. It's not to try to defeat anybody, but I feel like whoever keeps writing those obnoxious social media posts keeps forgetting about that. Oh, Dungeons & Dragons, the new Fortnite. It's told as a joke, and they just leapt at it. An interesting thing is the new handbooks, I believe, have the same suggested retail price as these old books, but these old books, their price has gotten kind of out of hand. Like, this book is $50, and, I have the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook printed in 1995, and it is literally half the price. I mean, talk about inflation all you want, but $25 got you the entirety of that. Although I did not start in AD&D, I started in 3.5, and 3.5's handbook has a suggested retail price of $30, just $5 more than the old one. And this one is from, what year is this one? This one is like somewhere in the 2000s. 2003. So this book is twice the age, basically twice the age of the current edition, and yet it is still $20 lower for this book. I don't know, are they going up by $10 per edition or something? But 3.5 was where I actually got my start. 3.5 is where a lot of people who are like in the more nerd space who liked their combat a bit more crunchy. It's kind of where they got, although anybody who is a fan of this will be like, oh, they simplified it too much, you know. You're always going to have complainers, but you cannot really argue that 3rd edition was like more aggressively monetized than 2nd edition. And 5th edition is kind of 3.5 returned, because 3.5, what it had going for it was it had a lot of third-party support, something that 2nd edition and 4th edition really did not have. Lots of people were making, you know, modules and, you know, side campaigns and stuff for this, and it was a really robust system, kind of the way 5th edition is now, with all sorts of people making things based on it, adapted from it. There was that whole big kerfuffle, I believe, last year about how the open gaming license was like getting revoked or destroyed or whatever, and a lot of people got upset about that because Wizards of the Coast wanted to try to, you know, have full control of the space again, like they did in 4th edition, which again was a bomb and created one of their biggest enemies. But the big reason they're talking about doing things this way is they feel that players are under-monetized. Like, most of the people who buy things are the dungeon masters. They buy the books and the maps and the minis and the dice and all of that. Like, a players only have to buy a set of dice. Well, you want to know why that is? It's because you've insisted that, like, every single new book has to be this big, like, $50 event when it comes out. It has to be this big and fancy and especially very expensive hardbound thing. And here's the thing. It didn't used to be. Like, here's City of the Spider Queen, one of the more, you know, famous, more robust modules from the Forgotten Realms setting from 3rd edition, 3.5 edition. It is in a soft-bound book. It is $30, which I admit is probably a lot for one of these kinds of books, but, you know, it doesn't have to be like this big fancy thing. And this is like a significant campaign that, you know, goes all the way from, like, 10th level to 18th level. So it is a huge, significant campaign that is about starting small and saving the world by the end. This entire thing goes from start to finish. It is massive. Like, they made miniatures for this thing. This is one of their biggest campaigns. It's like, well, I don't know if I'd say it's like Ravenloft equivalent, but this is a huge book, like a solid, like, massive campaign with all sorts of things to it. This is $30, soft bound, not very fancy. It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing. And, you know, if you want to monetize players, sell them stuff. I know the spellbook cards were pretty popular when they came out. I have a set for the druid I played. I, ironically enough, created Gaur Gura a year before Gaur Gura was even a thing. I had a druid who was like a stupid shark person, and it was wild. But they used to make all sorts of stuff for players too, like The Complete Adventurer. This is a book expressly for players. It contains prestige classes and feats and cool new items and interesting ways to use skills. This one, the Complete Adventurer, contained the Thief Acrobat class. As soon as I find it. The Thief Acrobat class was, yeah, there it is. The Thief Acrobat class was a class that I actually used. In 3.5 edition, there's a concept called Taking 10, where if you're not in a hurry, like if you have all the time in the world to tie a knot or set up some planks to make a bridge, you can choose to take 10. That is basically, you know, you take 10 minutes to complete the task, and you basically count your roll as having been a 10. So, as long as you're in a good situation, you can take 10 and do the roll. What the Thief Acrobat did was it gave you mastery and a bunch of cool skills. It gave you, like, acrobatics and tumble and climb and all of those things. It not only gave you mastery in those skills, but allowed you to take 10 even if you're under pressure, like you're being chased or you're in combat or something. I had a Thief Acrobat who was so good, they could do a 30 on a tumble check without having to make a check. They could go from one side of the battlefield to the other just totally unimpeded. Like, you know, Jedi needed a towel watching what my character could accomplish. And this is a book designed for players, and it doesn't even need to be this extensive. Like, this is a $30 book, but you also have, like, the Hero Builder's Guidebook, which contains, like, character sheets, but it also has, like, names. It talks about, oh, does it actually include the Scout class in it? Scout, a Wilderness Sneak. Okay, oh, these are like future careers, but the goal is it's about building characters. It is, it specifically goes race by race and how they interact with the different individual character classes. It has like name generators, all sorts of fun stuff like this. This is $15. Or, one of the things I like the most is, if you want to sell something to players, what do players do? They pick classes and they play through those classes. And they used to make, for old AD&D, they made support books for the character classes. This right here is the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Complete Paladin's Handbook. It is a must-read if you are going to be playing any kind of like old school classic Paladin, because it explains how things like the Paladin's Code is supposed to work. Like, the Paladin is not supposed to be like this buzzkill guy who shoots down all the fun ideas and, lays waste to every cut person they come across. No, a Paladin is supposed to be a bastion of good who glows so brightly that they inspire those around them to be good as well. This book, which explains how the code works, turned the Paladin, the old school Paladin with the Paladin's Code and all of it, into the favorite character class for me to play. I mean, I guess it helps that I am a huge fan of Superman, and he kind of does things that way as well, but this book goes out of its way to clarify things. Like, it talks about how a paladin cannot be dishonest, but that does not mean they have to answer questions truthfully. They can answer a question with words of wisdom, like a Confucianism or something. They can do the thing they always show off in the movies and just say their name and rank over and over again. Or they can clam up and say nothing. And if your DM tries to, challenge you on that, you can just tell them, betraying my friends would be the ultimate dishonor. If you have a DM who really wants to try to give it to you, just explain, make them read this book. Like, this book, if you wanted to play Paladin before, 4th edition and 5th edition, where it just doesn't matter anymore, this was required reading at my table. And, like I said, I love playing as Paladins. If you get, a challenge from a random drunkard at the bar, that is, you don't go to the bar looking for trouble. You go to the bar to, make friends, pal around, set a good example. If somebody tries to challenge you to a fight, they say that a paladin must accept a duel, but only if it's an honorable one. If it's somebody who's you've offended my family name or something like that, then that is a duel. What is it? There's DLC for Witcher 3 has a guy extending a duel at you, gauntlet and all. That would be an honorable duel. But a drunkard offering a challenge can be responded with, a hearty chuckle and an offer to buy a drink, or at worst, a brief act of pugilism outside the door of the bar. A paladin's supposed to be somebody who is fun to be around. If you have a couple of characters, they're rogues. There've been people rising from the dead out of a catacomb or something like that, and they want a paladin to help because paladins get all sorts of magic that can deal with undead. The paladin can say, the thieves want to go and they also want to collect treasure while dealing with this problem. A paladin can, rather than shoot down the idea and say, don't steal from the dead, a paladin player can say, well, then we must make sure that we offer a proper tithe to the local church, with a knowing wink to the DM to maybe increase the rewards to accommodate for that tithe. A paladin's not supposed to be a buzzkill. It's the same as my stance on evil players. You can play as an evil character. A chaotic evil character can be wild in a normal campaign, because chaotic evil people, they love trouble, and parties of adventurers always attract trouble. But the point is to have fun. Everybody is supposed to have fun, and you having fun at the expense of somebody else's fun is against the rules. And like I said, this is how they used to make the game. They made stuff for people to buy that weren't just, stage props. This, of course, encounters problems where you have to, buy updates when new books come out. But, make character guides again. Character guides that, compile the rules from, several books you've released that, talk about cool combos and how the class is supposed to be played. And about, in this case, the Paladin's Code of Honor. Just look at that! That is luscious! That delightful, beautiful artwork. This is something you buy for a player. I want to try to be a fighter. I should buy the Fighter's Guide to Fighters to see how this is. Ooh, I'm learning about fighters and how and when to use my maneuvers. Oh, this is great. Ooh, I want to try to be a wizard now, so I should get the Wizarding Book of Wizards and Wizardry. Ooh, look at this. Wizards are so cool. Oh, I didn't know I could use this spell to do that. I don't have to have line of sight for this thing to work. Sell them ways that they can learn how to play, how to be an optimal player. And people can buy it. Make them small, make them affordable. This is actually a pretty fancy book at $20, which is not much less than the guidebook, but this is an authoritative guide on how to properly play Paladin Classic. And like I said, it's what made me fall in love with the old school class. But honestly, I can understand if everything happening does not make you want to support Wizards anymore. I've kind of abandoned support for Wizards after they sent the Pinkertons after people, after they fired so many people. Like they have the nerve to talk about, oh, this great new world after cutting so much of their staff. So I can understand if you want to play something different. And you, thankfully, have plenty of options. WoD is a great option. World of Darkness. Hunter the Reckoning. It's maybe not one of the best known modules, but this is it's basically, if you're familiar with the show Supernatural, this is basically that as a playable game. It is an urban fantasy, and you can see how thick this book is. This book, I think, this book was $55, but this is a player's handbook and a DMG in one. It has ways to, detail adventures and how to big things, it actually has encounters and various things. And the best part is this is compatible with all of the different World of Darkness games. There's Hunter, there's also Vampire and Werewolf. I don't know if they finally brought Mage the Awakening back, but I assume it's any day now. But you could have, players who are hunters, players who are werewolves, players who are vampires. I'm not sure why they would get along. All three of them hate each other's guts. But Hunter is a ton of fun. I love Hunter so much. They've changed a couple of things. I am kind of fond of, the previous editions, Vice and Virtue system, where it actually gives you a mechanical incentive to behave a little badly. I actually like that system, and this one doesn't really have that system the same way it does. This is a popular choice. Of course, another obvious choice would be, one of the famous, rivals of Dungeons & Dragons made to play the way the old systems did. I'm, of course, talking about Dungeon Crawl Classics, am I right? Might not be the one you thought of. I know you might think of Pathfinder, which has kind of risen to be Dungeons & Dragons' most direct rivals, but I gotta give it to Dungeon Crawl Classics. I used to buy their modules, and then they made their own system, which plays like very old Dungeons & Dragons, where it's very, unforgiving. You don't roll 4d6 and drop 1. You roll 3d6. You will get your 3 charisma and like it. They actually have a system where you actually start the game with, a cadre of peasants at level 0, and whichever peasants survive the first dungeon go on to become the adventuring party. It is a wild system. And, you have other things, Avatar, The Last Airbender, or Avatar, just kind of the Avatar series, as in The Last Airbender, has a tabletop RPG now. I'm actually toying with the idea of doing a Dragon Ball RPG that has all sorts of mechanics to make it feel like you're playing an episode of Dragon Ball. You have games like Root, which the folks who made Chuckles the Clown, they're playing a game of this. There are games that are like a single page. There's a whole challenge of doing one-page rule tabletop RPGs. You have this one, which is a familiar problem. There's Guafa. There's all sorts of wild stuff. There are loads of indie games out there. I actually am not sure what happened to Tephra. I have not played this game since college. I should probably check in on them. I mean, Mothership. I am currently the Dungeon Master for Dungeons & Dragons group, but, for a couple of weeks, one of our players couldn't make it, so instead we played some Mothership, and we've been having a blast. This is, $5 for a brochure, or roughly 1 month of D&D Beyond subscription. And honestly, The Haunting of Ipsilon 14 is it is a treasure trove. It is a golden goose of a one-shot. It's $5 for it literally coming in a brochure. Now, I know the brochure is normally yellow. I bought a digital copy. I did pay for it. But yeah, I printed out this brochure and brought it. And this is an entire, like one-shot adventure in a $5 brochure. It's a really good, just sort of all-rounder, one-shot campaign. Mothership is basically a game. The best way to explain it is it's not really a game that you like build campaigns around. It is playing a horror movie. Plain and simple, you're playing a horror movie. You are probably going to die, but it is loads of fun. But Haunting of Ipsilon 14 has all sorts of cool stuff. Like, all of the fans have gone out there. They've made maps. They've made, like, character miniatures to use on those maps. There's actually out there, like, an interactive, like, computer terminal screen based on this module. If you buy the digital copy of this game, it actually, the game includes, like, audio logs in it that are, like, on cassette tapes. If you buy the digital version of the game, you actually get, like, recordings of those audio logs if you needed proof that I actually paid for it. It is a wonderful experience. If you want to play RPGs but are uncomfortable with what Dungeons and Dragons has been up to, with what Hasbro has been doing with it lately, by trying to turn it into a video game when it very definitely should not be, then you have so many options. I mean, I know one of the big selling points Dungeons & Dragons is trying to say is like, oh, you can have unlimited digital character sheets. And everybody's response has been, the wonderful, do you know how much a character sheet costs you? 10 cents at your nearest photocopier. And a lot of people have pointed out that this might be the reason why the new editions of the book do not have the character sheet somewhere printed inside of them, so that people can't just go and easily do that. It is weird. It is disgusting. Mothership's rules are free. Mothership's rules are free. Its character sheet is free. Characters are built in like 30 minutes. Like Dungeon Crawl Classics, it's kind of it has this brutal, crunchy way where you build characters. It's just, you only really get 3 choices on the entire character sheet. Everything else is generated for you, so you're very much employees of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation who are in way over their heads. It is an incredible experience. Like I said, the rules are free. The character sheets are free. The most famous modules in the book are $5. Can't really go wrong with that. You could buy 10 of the Mothership modules for the cost of 1 of these stupid books. Or 12 of them if you buy the digital edition. Yeah, if you buy the physical and digital edition of the book, it's an extra $10 rather than, coming with a digital copy of the book for free to, incentivize people to try out the new game with a free bonus digital edition. That might have been a good idea, maybe not. But yeah, I am about as sick of Hasbro shenanigans as a lot of you. And while I think I understand a lot of the problems, I still believe that so much of it is an attempt to monetize it like Fortnite, and I really don't think that is going to go well for them at all. I think a lot of people are going to turn on them. A lot of people are going to stick to the old 5th edition. A lot of people are going to move over to something else because, and I can't believe I have to say this, Dungeons & Dragons is not a video game, and that's why people like it. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the situation, and until next time, this is Kodak signing off.